What if I told you that the single greatest obstacle in your life is a version of yourself, a weaker self, that quietly sabotages every ounce of potential you possess? It might sound dramatic, but consider how many times you've postponed meaningful decisions, avoided necessary challenges, or let comfort lull you into inaction. Most of us walk through life carrying this hidden passenger, a voice that says later instead of now, or it's too difficult instead of let's see what we're really capable of. Yet, in the pages of ancient Stoic philosophy, particularly in the reflections of Marcus Aurelius, we find a startlingly direct approach. You can, through disciplined practice and clear-eyed courage, kill that weak version of yourself. Not in a flash of rage, but in a calm, methodical unmasking of the illusions that sustain it. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, don't forget to smash that like button and hit subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Did you know only 15% of you watching are subscribed? If you find these insights valuable, join our community and tap the notification bell so you never miss out on future content. We live in a restless age, with endless distractions and demands on our energy. Day by day, people chase fleeting goals or chase none at all, uncertain of their inner compass. Meanwhile, they sense a growing frustration. Why can't I just do the things I know I should? Why do I cling to routine comfort or fear or apathy when the part of me yearns for something more? That frustration matters. Left unaddressed, it fosters chronic underachievement, regret, even a quiet despair. But the good news is that there exists a blueprint, tested by centuries of thinkers who refused to settle for half measures. Stoicism, especially as embodied by Marcus Aurelius, offers an unflinching perspective. The gap between you and the life you envision lies in how you handle that weaker self. The moment you decide to confront it, and keep confronting it, something remarkable happens. Your actions start to match your ideals day by day. Today, we're going to plunge into this topic, weaving Stoic logic with other philosophical insights relevant to the modern struggles we all face. By the time we finish, you'll see how killing that weaker self isn't a matter of ruthless aggression, but of deliberate, rational alignment with your deeper values. You'll learn practical steps drawn from Aurelius's meditations, combined with wisdom from other traditions that can systematically dismantle procrastination, fear, or complacency. Why listen to me? I speak as an elder who's spent years studying these classical writings, testing their counsel in the flux of everyday life. Time after time, I've watched men transform once they stop coddling their own lesser impulses and start living by a Stoic compass. In the swirl of modern pressures, these ancient truths shine with even greater clarity. Here's our roadmap. First, we'll craft a powerful storytelling-style introduction, following the classic blueprint for capturing attention. Then, across 3 expansive parts, I'll narrate from the standpoint of a seasoned Stoic guide, neither too lofty nor too impassive, laying out how you can systematically identify and destroy that weak self. I'll do it with long paragraphs, minimal bullet points, focusing on a cohesive, engaging style that fits well in a video script. Throughout, you'll sense the presence of Marcus Aurelius, of Seneca, of Epictetus, echoing in the words, reminding you that while centuries pass, human nature remains the same. Let us begin now, forging a story that carries you from the threshold of complacency to the realm of disciplined, purposeful living. Imagine, if you will, the hush of early morning in an ancient Roman city, the sky still graying into dawn, and a lone figure, Marcus Aurelius himself, seated by a small writing table. The flicker of an oil lamp casts shadows across his worn face. War, betrayal, and personal loss weigh on him. Yet here he is, quill in hand, recording quiet notes that will one day become his meditations. How does he remain unshaken when so many others crumble under lesser strain? He centers on a simple yet shattering insight. The real battle is within. Each morning, he renews his choice to live by reason, not fear, to act for virtue, not vanity. In so doing, he kills any weaker urges that might breed laziness or despair. If an emperor tested by empire-wide crises could find such clarity, might not we, in our private battles, do the same? And why should you care enough to follow? Because the weaker self is not a mere poetic idea. It's the force that blocks you from the professional leaps you dream of, the deeper relationships you crave, the sense of fulfillment that a well-lived day brings. If left alive, it clings to comfort, always rationalizing inaction. We'll start tomorrow. Let's wait for the right mood. Who am I to try? Over months and years, those excuses accumulate, leaving an empty garden where you hoped for a bountiful orchard. Yet Stoicism has the blueprint to break this cycle. By the end of this script, you won't just understand how that weaker self thrives. You'll hold the key to dismantling it daily, so your orchard can flourish in all dimensions of life. Let me assure you, I've spent years immersed in Stoic texts and applying them to the realities of everyday hustle. I've seen men free themselves from crippling procrastination, from illusions that someone else will fix it, from the fear that they might fail if they try wholeheartedly. And I've also seen how ignoring these Stoic principles leads to constant frustration and regret. My aim is to present a message that is not theoretical but actionable, something you can start practicing by the time you leave this conversation. Because the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus isn't locked away in dusty scrolls. It's a living, breathing guide to forging a stronger self in the midst of modern chaos. Here's what I'll do. First, I'll break down the nature of this weak version of yourself, how it seeps into daily decisions and how it conceals itself behind logical excuses. Next, I'll explore Stoic pillars, like focusing on what lies in your control, acknowledging life's brevity, and harnessing virtue as your driving force, showing how each principle undercuts the weaker self's illusions. Then, we'll see how these insights unify into a structured plan, with specific habits and mental shifts you can adopt, ensuring you're not just inspired, but equipped. That's the plan, so let us commence, friend. Walking side by side down the corridor of Stoic knowledge, determined to leave behind the timid self that once held you captive. I recall a moment in my own life when I was younger, perched on a rocky hillside, feeling torn between stepping into a demanding role that frightened me or letting the opportunity pass. Around me, a gentle breeze rustled the sparse grass, but inside, a tempest raged, my weaker self swirling with self-doubt. Perhaps you know the feeling. You sense a call to rise, to attempt something beyond your comfort, but the quiet voice of fear murmurs, "Stay safe. Avoid embarrassment." In that moment, I remembered a teaching from Marcus Aurelius. If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. And it hit me. Complaining includes the silent whimpering of inaction. So I chose to push forward. The result wasn't a fairy tale success, but it was a defining pivot. I recognized that my weaker self was an artifact of illusions, of hoping for perfect readiness, perfect conditions, or a zero-risk scenario. once I saw those illusions for what they were, they lost their hypnotic grip. Let me paint the nature of this weaker self more vividly. It isn't just laziness. It's a composite of excuses, a preference for short-term ease over long-term integrity. It might show up when you plan to exercise in the morning, and that weaker self says, "You're tired, sleep in." Or when an idea for a creative project stirs your mind, but the weaker self insists you are unqualified. Or perhaps you want to approach someone special, or have a vulnerable conversation with your partner, yet you hold back, letting the moment slip away for fear of rejection. Each instance is a microcosm of the same phenomenon. Your rational mind knows the action is beneficial, but a feeble voice dresses up illusions. It might go wrong. I can't handle this. Maybe tomorrow. And you yield. Stoicism calls you to see that illusions are not real obstacles. They're mental projections. The key is building an unwavering stance that, whenever illusions appear, you calmly press forward, letting reason and virtue steer you. Marcus Aurelius, leading armies on the frontier, surrounded by uncertainties and betrayals, wrote repeatedly of the importance of aligning each day's actions with a purposeful stance. He recognized that the weaker self tries to sabotage progress by fixating on the what-ifs, the potential pains or disapproval. But Aurelius reframed everything in terms of what he could control, making rational decisions, fulfilling moral duty, ignoring the noise of external unpredictability. In your own context, this translates to ignoring the weaker self's preoccupation with worst-case scenarios or comfort cravings. Instead, you commit to consistent steps that reflect your core principles. That might be as small as finishing the tasks you schedule each day, or as bold as tackling a fear-laden project. Over time, these daily victories weaken the hold of that timid inner voice. One might ask, but how do I find the resolve to keep pressing on when comfort or fear feels so compelling? The Stoic answer is twofold. First, remind yourself that time is finite. Memento mori. None of us knows how many more mornings we'll see. The illusions that someday I'll be ready become absurd when you accept the fragility of life. This spurs you to act, to seize the present day's tasks, be they personal growth or larger ambitions. Second, anchor your actions in moral virtue. If the weaker self suggests skipping a commitment, Stoic reflection counters. Would ignoring my promise degrade my integrity? Would indulging laziness hamper my potential to serve or grow? By situating each choice in the moral dimension, you see that caving to illusions is not harmless. It is a breach of your own character. And Stoics hold character as paramount. That mindset confers a steady motivation beyond fleeting moods. You act from an ethical imperative, not a convenience-based rationale. For instance, let us suppose you aim to switch careers or start a new venture. The weaker self enumerates obstacles, the risk of failure, financial uncertainty, possible ridicule. Stoics say, indeed, any external pursuit is uncertain, but you control your thorough preparation, your honesty, your consistent effort. Fear of failure is fear of an outcome beyond your direct domain. Let it go and do what must be done. This approach strips illusions of their mystique. You realize that if you fail, you can adapt or try anew. Better an honorable attempt than a lifetime of regret. Over months, living by that principle dissolves the weaker self's illusions, strengthening your sense of agency. And, ironically, you often find that actual failure occurs less frequently than you dreaded, because your disciplined approach yields real competence. Another angle. the role of daily reflection. Stoics, like Aurelius, would each evening or morning examine their deeds, noticing where illusions took hold. Did I hide from a challenge, indulging comfort or fear? The aim wasn't self-flagellation, but clear-eyed improvement. If you catch yourself deferring a crucial phone call or skipping your creative practice, note it calmly. Why did I yield to the weaker self? What illusions did I believe? Then vow to correct it tomorrow. This cyclical correction, day after day, systematically prunes away the illusions that hamper you. It's like tending a garden each morning, removing weeds before they spread. Over time, the orchard of your potential stands free and flourishing, overshadowing the meager influence of that weaker voice. You might worry, won't I become cold, stoic in the pop culture sense, losing spontaneity? The genuine Stoic stance is not about emotionless existence. It's about reason guiding which emotions you feed and how you channel them. If joy or empathy arises naturally, you let it bloom. If fear or sloth emerges, you question whether it serves you. The orchard thrives on beneficial rainfall, constructive emotions, but discards harmful floods. By practicing Stoic composure, you become more open to real joys and connections, because you're no longer paralyzed by illusions. You can approach friendships, romances, or new experiences with sincerity, unburdened by the anxiety or laziness that once kept you in place. Perhaps you remain skeptical, thinking, I've tried discipline before and always fallen off the wagon. Why would Stoicism help now? Because Stoicism is not just discipline, it's a philosophical clarity. Discipline attempts might fail if they rely solely on forced willpower. But Stoicism changes how you interpret each moment's demands. Instead of treating tasks as chores, you see them as arenas to practice virtue. Each act, no matter how humble, like cleaning your space, finishing a report, or making that tough phone call, becomes a moral exercise in diligence, sincerity, or courage. This shift in perspective is profound. No longer are you grudgingly forcing yourself. You're upholding a personal vow to live by rational and ethical standards. That vow, repeated daily, cements a deeper drive that surpasses whim-based motivation. Over time, the orchard you cultivate is not just about external success, but about integrity and alignment with your highest self. That unwavering impetus is precisely what kills the weaker version within. Let's delve deeper into how illusions about perfection hamper you. Many men cling to the idea, I must be fully prepared before I attempt anything grand. They wait for elusive mastery, ignoring that mastery often arises from iterative attempts. The weaker self cunningly says, you're not quite there, letting you push your big leap into an indefinite future. Stoics see that as delusion. You never truly feel there until you start. By acting in partial readiness, you gather real feedback, refine, and grow in actual competence. Each stride you take in partial imperfection is a blow against the weaker self, which depends on illusions of needing more time or conditions. Marcus Aurelius himself governed in times of war and plague, never waiting for ideal calm. He managed each crisis as it came, forging progress from chaos. Let that example remind you, the orchard can be nurtured even in storms, if only you don't wait for them to subside. Let me share a short, personal anecdote from my later years. I once had an opportunity to speak publicly on Stoic ethics to a group I respected. My initial, weaker inclination was, am I truly ready to present? Might I stumble? That hesitation was the weaker self whispering illusions about perfect readiness. Then I recalled the Stoic principle. Do not fear uncertain outcomes, but focus on the honesty and earnestness of your preparation. I accepted, studied thoroughly, and delivered the talk. Was it perfect? Hardly. Yet the conversation sparked new connections, new insights, none of which would have emerged had I coddled that self-doubt. Even in older age, the orchard grows from repeated acts of stepping forward. I left that experience reaffirmed in the Stoic truth. Illusions only hold power if we treat them as reality. Once we question them, they crumble. At this point, you might sense the weight of these illusions in your own life. Perhaps you see how they shaped your recent decisions, delayed phone calls, half-hearted commitments, empty days that never yielded the progress you long for. In the chapters ahead, we'll detail how Stoic reflection can map these illusions specifically, like fear of failure, perfectionism, comfort addiction, and how to systematically dismantle them. For now, the key is acknowledging that illusions are your real enemy, not external adversity, and illusions thrive on inaction. By taking consistent, reason-guided steps each day, you starve them. Over time, your orchard's momentum keeps illusions from rerouting. Even if you slip occasionally, as Stoics note, you correct your course swiftly, refusing to dwell in regret or revert to old patterns. One final reflection. Living stoically in a modern world can feel lonely, as though you stand against a tide of widespread complacency. Yet your quiet discipline can become an example that inspires others, friends, colleagues, even family, widening the orchard's influence. People notice a certain calm determination in you, an absence of petty excuses. They wonder, how does he maintain such unwavering clarity? That curiosity might lead them to Stoic teachings themselves, or at least to appreciate your steadiness. Meanwhile, your orchard reaps the synergy of building alliances with those who share or respect your approach. Alone or not, you continue, unperturbed by the illusions that hamper so many. Thus ends the first section of our narrative. We've established the nature of your weaker self, how illusions feed it, and how Marcus Aurelius's brand of Stoicism frees you from it. The orchard metaphor stands. Each day, you either let illusions choke your growth or actively tend your potential. Next, we'll delve deeper, examining how daily Stoic practice, reflection, moral framing, acceptance of mortality, and a focus on controllable effort weave together to methodically kill that weaker self. Think of it as learning to handle each tool in a gardener's repertoire, ensuring no weed or pest can gain a lasting hold. By the final pages, you'll hold not just an understanding, but a living method for living free of that timid, comfort-bound voice. For now, let these ideas simmer in your mind. Observe how illusions show up in small moments today. Then be ready, in Part 2, to refine your Stoic weapons and sharpen them for daily combat. The orchard awaits your care. The illusions tremble at the clarity to come. I remember well the day I first tasted what you might call the power of decision. The raw realization that my life could pivot not on grand events, but on the smallest acts of will. Before that, I'd spent years dabbling in different pursuits, half committed to learning a craft, half-hearted in my attempts to mend relationships. At the time, I never would have admitted it, but looking back, I see a thread running through it all. I was letting the weaker part of me guide the show. We all do this more than we'd care to admit. We skimp on practice, skip that crucial phone call, or avoid the tough conversation. We treat tomorrow as a safe harbor where we can deposit all the tasks we'd rather not face today. But tomorrow never truly arrives as we imagine it. It morphs into regrets or unfulfilled plans. It's only when we face that pattern head-on, refusing to yield to illusions of ease or infinite time, that something shifts. That shift, so crucial to forging a purposeful life, is exactly what I want to illuminate now as we delve deeper into killing that weak version of yourself. Let's retrace a few steps for context. In the previous conversation, we explored how illusions like perfect readiness or fear of failure form the lifeblood of your weaker self. That weaker self thrives on your acceptance of these illusions, convincing you it's safer to delay or avoid. We used Marcus Aurelius as a guiding example, a man tested by empire-wide crises, yet unwavering in his daily discipline and moral alignment. If he found a path to suppress such illusions in the midst of wars and betrayals, we can certainly apply those principles in our modern swirl of distractions and anxieties. But now we must go deeper, turning the lens on everyday scenarios, showing exactly how illusions creep in and how to neutralize them with Stoic fortitude. The orchard metaphor still applies. Illusions are the creeping weeds that left unchecked strangle your growth, but with vigilant care, you prevent them from ever taking hold. Perhaps you're thinking, I've read the Stoics, or at least tried some disciplined routines, but I keep sliding back. That's natural. The illusions are persistent. The weaker self doesn't vanish after a single confrontation. It lurks, waiting for moments of fatigue or emotional upheaval to reassert its hold. So, the essence of Stoic practice is consistent watchfulness. This is not a one-time epiphany. It's a living method repeated daily. The good news is that each day's small effort accumulates. You become, over time, the kind of person who no longer entertains illusions for more than a moment before calling them out. You steadily starve that weak self of nourishment. In the paragraphs that follow, we'll scrutinize some of the illusion's prime tactics, like comfort, fear, external validation, or false humility, and see how Stoic thought cuts through them with reason and moral perspective. Let me start with comfort. Comfort is insidious, for it masquerades as a harmless preference, yet can slowly dominate your life. You might say, what's wrong with being comfortable? Shouldn't I enjoy rest or leisure? Indeed, Stoics don't forbid moments of rest. But the weaker self exploits comfort as an excuse to sidestep essential growth. You forego the morning run because your bed is warm. You skip a crucial skill-building session because a show is more soothing. Over days, these small surrenders accumulate until you realize you haven't moved forward. Marcus Aurelius hammered this point in his personal notes. He'd awaken to the temptation of a few more minutes under the blankets in the cold dawn. But he'd scold himself gently. You were made to do your work, man. Are you going to hide under the covers like a sluggard? The orchard needs watering daily. If you keep telling yourself you'll water it after your comfort break, the orchard withers. That is the core realization. The Stoic response, therefore, is neither to demonize all comfort nor to indulge it blindly, but to hold comfort in its rightful place. If a task aligns with your moral duties or personal evolution, it supersedes comfort. You move first, rest later, not as a punishment, but as a rightful ordering of priorities. Now, some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey, and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write better every day, so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. The next tactic illusions employ is fear. Fear often arises as a voice predicting disaster. If I try, I might fail. If I speak out, I might embarrass myself. If I challenge the status quo, I might lose stability. This is the same voice that Aurelius faced, though on a grander scale. He saw that letting fear dictate action is the surest path to cowardice and stagnation. In a Stoic lens, fear is a signpost telling you that the outcome is uncertain, or that you're venturing beyond your comfort zone. But Stoics cling to what's within their control, their willingness to act, to plan carefully, to uphold virtue. The outcome, be it success or failure, rests partly in fortune's hands. By relinquishing obsession with outcome, you defang fear. You accept there's no guarantee, but you choose to step forward anyway, because stepping forward is the only route to growth. Each time you do, you prove to your weaker self that fear cannot chain you. Over time, fear-based illusions weaken. You see that half of the disasters you imagined never materialize, and even those that do are often manageable. Courage blossoms, not as a lack of fear, but as a reasoned stance that acknowledges fear without bowing to it. Another cunning aspect is the quest for external validation. Many men drift in life, half living, waiting for someone else, parents, peers, society, to affirm their readiness or brilliance. The weaker self uses that craving as a shield against personal accountability. I'll wait until an expert says I'm good enough, or let me gather more praise before I fully commit. Stoics view external praise as ephemeral. You might receive applause for mediocre effort, or be mocked for genuine excellence, depending on the crowd. Tying your actions to others' approval enslaves you to their whims. Aurelius wrote that we should never let the noise of the crowd overshadow our inner moral compass. The orchard flourishes only if you water it from convictions that arise from within, not from the hope that passers-by might compliment your gardening. Therefore, each time you catch yourself thinking, "I need them to validate me," Stoic reflection corrects it. I alone am responsible for my improvement, my moral alignment, my discipline. Applause or critique is secondary. That shift robs illusions of external validation from controlling your decisions. Beware also a sneaky form of self-sabotage, false humility or pseudo-humbleness. The weaker self can claim, "Oh, I'm just an average person, not meant for big achievements," as if being unremarkable excuses you from trying. Real humility is good, but Stoics differentiate humility that fosters continuous learning from resignation that justifies inaction. Aurelius, despite his power, repeatedly reminded himself of human fragility, but he never concluded that it meant, "I might as well do nothing." Instead, humility spurred him to refine each day's tasks. So, if you find yourself belittling your capability in order to avoid stepping up, you're letting illusions of "I'm nobody special" hamper your orchard. A Stoic posture recognizes that while we are mere mortals, we also have reason and virtue to shape the world around us. Dismissing your potential is just as arrogant as overestimating it, because it claims you uniquely can't accomplish what many do with diligence. The Stoic cures that by saying, "I do not claim grandeur, but I do claim the right to improve daily, no matter how small or large the sphere of my life may be." This self-respect kills illusions that hide behind false humility. Let me pivot toward a deeper intangible, the storyline we adopt about our past failures or weaknesses. Some claim they've always been timid or lazy, thus fated to remain so. Stoicism rejects deterministic thinking. If illusions arise from your past experiences, reminding you tried once and failed, Stoic reflection answers, that was then, under different conditions. Now I choose again, armed with new knowledge. Indeed, Aurelius or Seneca had public missteps or controversies, yet they didn't freeze in shame. They recognized each day as a fresh moral battlefield. This is how you starve illusions that tie you to old narratives of defeat. Each morning, you reaffirm the orchard is present, the sun is up, the tools are in your hands. Why let yesterday's dryness stop you from watering today's seeds? You might wonder, all of this sounds correct, but how do I translate it into daily routine so I don't slip into autopilot? That's where Stoic journaling or reflection is crucial. I keep returning to it because it is the living bridge between ideals and daily reality. If, each evening, you reflect in writing or in quiet thought, where did illusions hold me back today? Which illusions were they? Comfort, fear, external praise, or false humility? You identify them concretely. You might note, at midday I avoided sending that proposal. Why? I realized I feared criticism. Next time, I'll send it promptly. Then the next day, you carry that resolution. Over weeks, illusions find no unlit corner to hide. This practice is the orchard caretaker's daily inspection. Miss it, and weeds flourish unseen. Follow it consistently, and illusions diminish. That's the Stoic method. Incremental but persistent confrontation of illusions. Let's expand on the orchard metaphor a bit more. Think of illusions as weeds that adapt. If you remove them in one area, they attempt to sprout elsewhere. For example, you might conquer your fear of public speaking, only to discover a new form of comfort lust making you avoid physical exercise. Or maybe you stop seeking external approval at work, but then you start craving it in social circles. The weaker self tries new angles to reassert illusions. The orchard caretaker's watchfulness, daily or weekly, is how you intercept these shifts. By not letting illusions linger, you keep the orchard free of them. Over time, you might achieve a certain clarity that illusions rarely surprise you. You see them forming and respond swiftly, continuing your tasks unimpeded. However, we must not forget the Stoic principle that adversity doesn't vanish. Even if illusions lose ground, life can still present hardships, job loss, health issues, family crises. But if illusions are no longer controlling you, you can face these hardships with calm fortitude. The orchard might endure storms, but your daily Stoic approach ensures you adapt. This helps you remain grounded when chaos or sorrow comes, because you're not weighed down by illusions telling you, this shouldn't happen to me, or I can't handle this. Marcus Aurelius lived in plague times, losing many loved ones, but stoically he recognized it as part of the broader nature of existence. He acted as best he could each day. That spirit is what we aim for. Illusions do not hamper you, so your actions remain firm and constructive, even under duress. Some might voice a final concern. Will killing the weaker self make me ruthless or lacking in compassion? Actually, the opposite. When illusions drop, you see others' struggles more clearly, empathizing with how illusions weigh them down. You become more patient and helpful, not resentful or harsh. Stoicism fosters empathy by reminding you that all humans wrestle with fear and comfort lust. Freed from illusions in your own life, you can extend a calmer hand to those still tangled. This can enhance your relationships, friendships, even your capacity to lead or mentor. The orchard you cultivate might, in time, give shade or fruit to others seeking refuge from their illusions. That synergy forms the deeper reward of Stoic practice, an internal transformation that resonates outward. Returning now to the elder Stoic's voice. You see, my friend, illusions are not monstrous beings lurking in the shadows. They are subtle shapes cast by your own mind, shaped by comfort, fear, vanity, or false beliefs about who you are or must remain. The moment you shine the lamp of Stoic logic, the illusions lose their shape. The orchard stands ready for your care. Each morning you pick up the tools, acknowledging life's brevity, focusing on controllable effort, framing your tasks in moral purpose, and reflecting on your progress. Each day, illusions might attempt to creep in, but you see them as illusions. You do not wage war with emotional rage. You merely name them, deny their premise, and act from reason. In so doing, you kill that weaker self. Or, more gently put, you starve it until it fades, replaced by a self that matches your noblest aspirations. Perhaps you see now the path forward. But stay with me. In the next segment, our final one, we'll integrate these Stoic concepts into a clear, step-by-step regimen, ensuring you don't just admire Stoic truths, but live them daily. We'll look at how to maintain momentum when old habits try to resurface, how to handle external unpredictabilities without slipping back, and how to adapt Stoic discipline in personal or professional contexts. Because yes, once illusions are identified, you must remain vigilant. The orchard demands ongoing care, or it can revert to weeds in a season. If you're prepared, if you truly desire to see that orchard flourish, productive, serene, unstoppable, then let us proceed soon to part 3. That's where we sew all threads together into the living tapestry of consistent Stoic discipline. For now, reflect. Which illusions are you letting hamper your orchard? Is it comfort disguised as I deserve a break? Or fear disguised as I might fail? Or external validation disguised as I'll wait for approval? Or false humility disguised as I'm not special enough? Identify them. Write them down if possible. Then, in the upcoming conversation, we'll finalize the Stoic tactics that systematically uproot those illusions day after day. Because it is only through daily application, repeated over weeks and months, that you truly kill that weak version of yourself. The orchard stands waiting for your unwavering hand. Do not let illusions talk you out of the dawn's labor. When day breaks, be ready to water, prune, and watch new growth take shape. The illusions, starved of your attention, will wither, and you, forging ahead, will live more fully, more intentionally, in alignment with the Stoic ideals Marcus Aurelius espoused centuries ago. I recall a soft, rainy dawn in a coastal village where I once tarried for a season. The tide hummed against the rocks, and each morning, fishermen rose early, trudging out to sea despite weather or weariness. Observing them day after day, I saw a parallel to our own inner battles against illusions. These men didn't wait for perfect conditions to sail. They accepted storms, readied their boats, and set forth. It wasn't bravado. It was necessity, yes, but also a quiet discipline that overcame whatever lesser urges might whisper, "Stay in bed." That routine sparked in me a final realization. We can learn from such unwavering commitment to daily purpose. If your orchard is to thrive, if you are to permanently conquer that weaker self, you must embrace a consistent regimen of Stoic practices that let no illusions grow. In these final pages, we gather all we've explored and weave it into a living framework you can sustain, ensuring you remain vigilant and resolute under all conditions. Let us revisit briefly what has been unveiled thus far. You recognized that illusions, often disguised as comfort, fear of failure, or the chase for external validation, are the lifeblood of your weaker self. Each day you succumb to them, your orchard is neglected. You also learned how Marcus Aurelius and other Stoics overcame illusions by focusing on moral effort rather than guaranteed outcomes, by practicing daily reflection, and by harnessing the acceptance of mortality as a spur toward action. These insights form the mental scaffolding. But scaffolding alone does not build a house. You need to lay bricks methodically. For you, those bricks are the daily, weekly, and even monthly Stoic routines that keep illusions from rerouting. In the hush of that coastal dawn, I once asked a fisherman, "Do you never feel tempted to delay your launch if the sky looks foreboding?" He smiled, wrinkles deepening around his eyes, and said, "Every morning, a small part of me says we should wait, but the fish won't wait for me. Once you accept that, you just go." You see, that's the Stoic stance in practice. The orchard needs tending whether you're in the mood or not. By making your tasks non-negotiable, by affirming their necessity rather than indulging illusions, you train your mind to side with reason. Over time, illusions lose potency because they find no audience. If your orchard includes learning a new skill, building a business, or strengthening personal virtues, each day's refusal to yield to illusions cements your progress. Now, let's detail a workable plan for embedding Stoic discipline in your life, so that illusions find no fertile ground. To begin, reflect each morning on the principle of mortality. I cannot stress this enough. Memento mori, the reminder that each day is precious, cuts illusions at the root. If you treat your days as infinite, illusions easily say, "Tomorrow is fine." But if you greet the morning with a short reflection, "I might not see tomorrow, so how shall I use this day?" illusions falter. This is not grim but freeing. Let that reflection be brief yet potent, maybe a quiet thought or a line from Aurelius. Then identify one or two tasks or challenges you might ordinarily postpone. Declare to yourself calmly, "These I shall face." Conditions need not be perfect. Start small if need be, but start. That morning vow sets the orchard's tone. Next, commit to an afternoon or midday check-in. Why midday? Because illusions often creep in once the initial surge of resolve fades. Perhaps you accomplished a bit in the morning, but then mid-afternoon lull or a minor setback invites the weaker self to say, "That's enough for today." By scheduling a quick reflection, just a couple of minutes, you realign. Ask, am I letting illusions talk me out of completing what I intended? Did new fears or comforts arise? Confront them with Stoic logic. If you realized you deviated, calmly pivot back on track. The orchard caretaker can't vanish midday. He must glance over the rows to ensure no new weeds have sprouted. This midday routine often spells the difference between a half-productive day and a fully engaged one. Now we come to evening reflection. The ancients, including Seneca, often recounted their day's deeds and misdeeds before sleeping. This final check is where you glean your Stoic lessons in the raw. Did illusions sabotage a conversation you needed to have, or a project step you promised yourself you'd do? Name it plainly. Did you procrastinate finalizing that email or swallow your words when you should have addressed an issue? Or perhaps you overcame illusions. You tackled a tough phone call or made an uncomfortable approach with calm determination. Recognize that victory, no matter how small. This cyclical approach, morning vow, midday check-in, evening reflection, builds a fortress of awareness. Illusions rely on your mind drifting aimlessly. But here, you are never adrift. You have a schedule of introspection that shines a spotlight on illusions whenever they tiptoe in. To reinforce these daily rituals, you can adopt a weekly or bi-weekly deeper review. Possibly each Sunday evening, you ask bigger questions. Am I still aiming at the same orchard goals? Has my discipline lapsed in certain areas? Is there a pattern of illusions that re-emerged, like fear, comfort, or external validation? By stepping back, you see the forest for the trees, ensuring illusions that quietly evolve are caught early. If you spot a recurring slip, Stoicism advises you to implement a targeted remedy. Maybe you remove a tempting distraction from your environment if comfort lust is the culprit, or you publicly commit to a deadline if fear is your main block. That adaptation is how the orchard caretaker addresses shifting seasons or new pests. You do not rely on a fixed plan from weeks ago if circumstances have changed. You remain flexible, always ready to reassert your Stoic stance. Let us talk about synergy with others. Some men prefer to keep Stoic discipline private, fearing misunderstanding from family or friends. But if you have a partner or close ally open to discussing these ideas, consider a shared Stoic reflection. Maybe once a week you compare notes on your illusions, your day's successes, your slip-ups. They need not be a Stoic scholar, just someone willing to exchange accountability. This camaraderie can multiply your orchard's resilience. If illusions try to isolate you, you or your ally can highlight them. I notice you've been avoiding that creative work you used to mention. Any reason? That gentle nudge cracks illusions open. Of course, if no ally is forthcoming, Stoicism remains potent in solitude. Aurelius, after all, wrote his meditations for himself. The orchard caretaker's dedication does not hinge on an audience. A question might arise. What if I keep bouncing between illusions? Some days I kill the comfort lust, but I become paralyzed by fear or external validation thirst the next. That's normal. The illusions adapt. The Stoic approach, as repeated, is daily vigilance. Each day you might find illusions wearing a new mask, but your method remains the same. Identify, label, act from reason, not from illusion. Over time, illusions lose their novelty. Like a cunning trick that fails once the ruse is known. You become adept at detecting the pattern, swiftly dismissing it. This fosters an inner calm. You realize illusions can't truly outsmart your Stoic watchfulness unless you let them. Over months and years, illusions barely register, overshadowed by the orchard's steady growth. Does this method mean every day must be a triumph? Of course not. Stoicism never pretends you'll be perfect or unstoppable every single moment. Some days, external crises or emotional turmoil might overshadow your discipline. That's precisely when Stoic acceptance and resilience matter most. If circumstances break your routine, you adapt humbly. Maybe you do half your tasks or shift them around. But you do not let illusions interpret that as a free pass to revert entirely. You maintain at least a thread of your Stoic discipline, ensuring illusions do not fill the vacuum. Then, once the crisis passes, you re-establish your full orchard routine. This is how a Stoic orchard remains robust through storms. It might shed some leaves, but the roots remain healthy. To illustrate, let me offer a concrete scenario from everyday life. Suppose you're building a side business while juggling a day job. You aim to devote 2 hours each evening to this new venture. The weaker self constantly tries to deter you. You're tired, do it tomorrow, or wait until you master a new skill, or no one might buy your product anyway. The Stoic plan says, each morning recall your mortality. Time is finite, so push forward today. At midday, if you notice your energy dipping, you reaffirm your vow for the evening. By the evening reflection, you gauge whether illusions stole your 2 hours. If yes, you vow specific adjustments for tomorrow, like tackling the toughest piece first, or uninstalling a distractive app. If illusions keep returning in new guises, each day you refine your approach, never letting them linger unchallenged. Over weeks, you discover you've consistently put in the hours, advanced your skills, perhaps launched a prototype. Meanwhile, illusions starve from your unwavering daily confrontation. Another dimension is how you handle success or partial achievement. Sometimes illusions reappear as complacency once you taste a small victory. I've done enough, time to rest. The orchard caretaker doesn't abandon the orchard because a few rows look promising. He continues the routine that fosters ongoing yield. Stoicism says you remain grounded. If you reach a milestone, celebrate briefly, then reaffirm your broader mission. Illusions may whisper, now you can slack off, but Stoic reflection counters, one success does not fulfill my entire potential. The orchard always can flourish more if I keep tending it. This ensures you avoid plateauing or letting your discipline fade once a short-term goal is met. Let's also consider emotional nuance. Some worry Stoicism means ignoring joy or ignoring sadness. Not so. Stoicism means you choose which emotions to entertain, guided by reason. If joy or sadness arises organically, you accept them as part of life's tapestry. But you do not let illusions manipulate these emotions into paralyzing or self-indulgent states. For instance, if grief visits you from a personal loss, you experience it fully, but do not let it evolve into illusions of, life is pointless, so I'll do nothing. Instead, you remain active, even in sorrow, because your orchard must still be watered. Conversely, if excitement about a new possibility floods you, you ride that positivity but remain measured. Knowing illusions might twist excitement into unrealistic daydreaming. So you harness your excitement to fuel disciplined steps, refusing to let illusions push you into rash or unfocused pursuits. Now, let me circle back to moral virtue, which many men overlook in their quest to kill the weaker self. True Stoic transformation is not just a matter of getting things done, it's about living in alignment with higher principles, such as honesty, courage, justice, and self-control. That means each day, as you push past illusions to complete tasks or grow in skill, you also check whether your actions uphold these virtues. Are you being honest in your dealings, courageous in facing conflict, fair to those around you, temperate in your habits? If you excel at discipline but betray moral standards, illusions simply find a new angle. For example, you might become controlling or arrogant about your discipline, trampling on others. That would be illusions of pride overshadowing empathy. So, real Stoic mastery ensures your orchard grows ethically. This moral dimension ironically strengthens your discipline, because your motivation is no longer selfish or shallow. It stems from a genuine vow to be a virtuous force in the world, a caretaker not only of your orchard, but of how it impacts others. As we near the close of this extended conversation, let me paint a final picture of what life can look like when illusions no longer hold sway. Each morning, you rise with a quiet sense of purpose. You know your day's main tasks and moral aims. Even if fleeting hesitation appears, you see it for what it is, a mere shadow, no real obstacle. You proceed, whether that means devoting time to a creative pursuit, finishing necessary chores, or confronting a difficult conversation. At midday, if you falter, you adapt swiftly, not letting guilt or shame freeze you. By evening, you reflect, glean lessons, set a fresh vow for tomorrow. Over weeks, your orchard of personal development, skill mastery, or project progress blossoms. You find yourself less anxious about external outcomes or others' opinions, since illusions about control or validation have been gently laid aside. Freed from illusions, you savor real joys. Time with loved ones, the satisfaction of honest work, the quiet pride of living aligned with your chosen path. You also handle adversity, unexpected bills, conflicts, or rejections, with a calmer approach, seeing them as tasks to address, not cosmic judgments on your worth. That is the Stoic orchard in bloom. The weaker self, starved of illusions, shrinks to a whisper. Occasionally, it might reappear in times of exhaustion or emotional turbulence, but your daily Stoic practice, the orchard caretaker's vigilance, soon calls it out and denies it the chance to sabotage you. Over the long arc of your life, this amounts to a grand shift. No major regrets about, "I wish I had tried." No haunting sense that you let comfort or fear define your possibilities. Instead, you live with a sense of bold serenity, knowing you consistently rose to the tasks that beckoned. That is the real fruit of Stoicism. An unshakable confidence grounded not in ego, but in daily proof that illusions cannot deter you from acting with reason and virtue. Finally, let me remind you not to fear the challenge. Killing the weaker self is not violent, but a peaceful act of removing illusions. Indeed, illusions might cling, protesting their necessity to keep you safe or comfortable. You respond, "I appreciate the caution, but I choose clarity." The orchard beckons every day, and the caretaker who answers that call does so with love, not cruelty. Love for what the orchard can become, and respect for the Stoic path that yields real growth. As you proceed from here, I encourage you to take these Stoic frameworks and implement them in literal daily steps. Write them down if helpful. Start tomorrow morning with a vow that acknowledges mortality, identifies key tasks, and frames them in virtue. Do a midday check, correct your course, and at night, reflect. If illusions ambush you, label them, question them, and proceed anyway. Over and over, illusions lose ground. Your orchard flourishes, and that weaker self becomes a memory, a quiet echo of who you used to be before Stoic discipline guided you to your rightful strength. Thus, we conclude our journey. You have, I hope, gained not just insight but a structured approach for banishing illusions. The orchard metaphor stands as your mental anchor. Illusions are weeds, you are the caretaker. Stoicism is your unwavering method. Remember that illusions can be persistent. They thrive in neglected corners. So keep watch daily. Let no illusions remain unexamined, and never doubt that consistent Stoic devotion leads you to the orchard's richest fruits. A life of purposeful action, moral clarity, and the steady contentment of one who knows he is no longer enslaved by a weaker self. May these teachings from Marcus Aurelius and related philosophies guide you now and in all the days to come, as you shape a destiny forged in reason, free from illusions, and shining with quiet, unbreakable resolve. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos, and if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.
My friend, draw closer, and let me tell you a tale of reflection, one that might guide you to see how the Stoic way can illuminate a life spent more fruitfully, unburdened by the 10 sorts of activities these ancient philosophers warned against. Allow me to speak as an older narrator, not lofty or academic, but someone who has spent decades observing how time, that most precious resource, can slip away if we squander it on pursuits that yield neither insight nor genuine well-being. In Stoic texts, we find repeated reminders that the mind is not simply a vessel to be filled with random experiences. It is an instrument we can refine or let decay. Today we will talk about those unproductive, draining habits that Stoics recommend we walk away from, not to appear ascetic or holier than thou, but to protect our clarity and direct our energies to what truly matters. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, don't forget to smash that like button and hit subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Did you know only 15% of you watching are subscribed? If you find these insights valuable, join our community and tap the notification bell so you never miss out on future content. I recall a period in my younger days stumbling through an existence that felt perpetually rushed yet aimless. Each evening, I landed in bed, exhausted, unsure of what I had really accomplished, suspecting I was devoting myself to trifles. Then I chanced upon a scrap of wisdom from Epictetus, who reminded me that our judgments and choices define how we spend our time. Intrigued, I began to examine my routine, identifying pockets of wasted effort, empty chatter, pointless envy, overindulgence in fleeting pleasures. I found a Stoic perspective that taught me which activities actually degrade our quality of life, how to step away from them, and how to align each day with a calmer, more purposeful rhythm. To be clear, the Stoics do not brand all amusements or unstructured moments as sinful. Rather, they highlight that certain kinds of pursuits do not just fail to bring lasting benefit. They also corrode our mind with illusions or squander the hours we could devote to more meaningful tasks or genuine leisure. Over time, I've come to label these 10 activities as a handy way of remembering them, though the Stoics themselves often scattered references throughout their writings. My aim is not to bark at you with bullet points or moralizing rules, but to share how an older Stoic voice might discuss them in a human way, through stories and a flowing narrative. Let me begin with the first 2 or 3 that we will explore here in part 1, weaving them into a personal account so you see how they spring to life in everyday contexts. I shall start by telling you about a younger fellow I knew, good-natured, bright in his own way, who spent countless hours locked in cycles of idle gossip. Morning to night, whether at a corner cafe or during downtime at work, he chatted about who said what, who might be feuding, who rose or fell in social standing. At first I joined him, thinking it harmless, but Stoic reflection soon nudged me to see that such talk rarely led to insight. It stoked petty resentments and fueled judgments about people we scarcely understood. My friend was not a malicious person, but his addiction to gossip took away from real learning or from building genuine bonds. Each day ended with a swirl of inconsequential stories that neither improved his moral sense nor brought him lasting joy. The Stoics warn that excessive gossip traps us in illusions about the importance of every rumor, while our own rational development languishes. If you ask a Stoic teacher, they'd say that moments of conversation are best spent either forging deeper connections or exchanging insights that might benefit someone. Gossip, by contrast, often fans envy or hostility, sapping our mental energy for matters that truly need attention. This young man's mind, though capable, stayed stuck in shallow grooves, and I, by proximity, felt my own mind cloud. Only after reading more of Marcus Aurelius, who constantly reminded himself to shun empty chatter, did I gently step back from the gossip circuits. My friend noticed my absence, teased me for being aloof, but ironically I felt lighter, no longer fretting about who might be backbiting or who rumored what. Freed from that swirl, I discovered more time to read, reflect, and engage in calm dialogues. Over months, that small shift in daily habit reduced my stress and sharpened my focus. A second activity Stoics avoid is the indulgence in chronic complaint, letting each annoyance or setback bloom into verbal laments. This is not to say Stoics never acknowledge hardship or raise concerns, but they do it with purposeful brevity and a problem-solving mindset. I recall an acquaintance, older than I at the time, whose entire conversation revolved around complaining about the weather, about how society changed, about how the neighbors parked their cars. Day after day, he nursed the same complaints, never seeking or accepting solutions, never adapting. Stoic philosophy taught me that such complaining devours our emotional equilibrium, feeding a sense of victimhood. Instead, if an issue can be fixed, we should fix it or propose how. If it cannot, we should let it rest. Dwelling on it fosters negativity that yields no improvement. Over time, I saw how my acquaintance's health and mind deteriorated. He lived in a fog of bitterness. Meanwhile, Stoic thinkers argued that complaining about uncontrollables only chains us to a false sense of grievance. So I practiced limiting my own complaints, choosing either to quietly remedy the frustration or accept it with equanimity. The result was a surprising lift of mental burden. Freed from the habit of voicing every irritation, I found myself calmer, my mind more open to constructive ideas. Others might have called it self-discipline, but from a Stoic lens, it was simply acknowledging that complaining changes nothing. Action or acceptance is the path, not endless moaning. Let me link these two activities, gossip and complaining, to illustrate how Stoics see them as intertwined. Gossip often leads to complaining about others, fueling a negativity loop that saps entire evenings or lunches. People gather, rehash the same petty grievances. Nothing is solved, no moral insight emerges, only collective frustration. Stoic philosophers might say we degrade our potential for reason by letting such talk dominate. If we turned that energy toward exchanging knowledge, or calmly planning solutions, or even enjoying heartfelt connections, we might find less stress and more growth. Indeed, Stoics warn that once we let gossip or complaint define our interactions, we risk drifting into the third activity, blaming and scapegoating. This is where we externalize responsibility for every misfortune. If a project fails, we pick a scapegoat. If a friendship cools, we label the other person as flawed. Meanwhile, Stoic reflection asks, what part can I influence or improve? How can I adapt or refine my conduct? We do not deny that sometimes others truly err or harm us, but Stoic reasoning says dwelling on blame does not resolve the root cause or restore peace of mind. Instead, we address wrongdoing if we can, or distance ourselves if needed, but we do not remain stuck in the bitter mode of pointing fingers. Over time, that Stoic clarity fosters a more solution-focused outlook, which often leads to better outcomes with less mental strain. I can recall a small fiasco at a workplace years ago in which the manager rushed to find who was at fault for a missed deadline rather than addressing the actual resource shortfall. Days of tension ensued, all revolving around accusations. Nothing improved. Then someone quietly stepped forward with a Stoic approach, acknowledging the manager's frustration, but clarifying that we needed to fix the underlying workflow. Within a week, we corrected the process and the blame cycle subsided. Observers might have said that Stoic approach was smart problem-solving, yet from a philosophical standpoint, it was simply refusing to get mired in blame or complaint. Freed from that negative swirl, the team advanced. Over the years, I saw many such scenarios. They reinforced how Stoics do not waste time on scapegoating, for it can lock us in a fruitless loop of bitterness. Instead, Stoics push us to accept where we erred, rectify if possible, and move on. The mental clarity that arises from halting blame fosters new ideas, less stress, and, ironically, better relationships. Even if we parted ways with the manager, we parted without rancor. A fourth activity, somewhat related to scapegoating, is chasing applause or external validation. This is not unique to Stoicism. Many wisdom traditions caution against living for the crowd's cheers. But Stoics emphasize that seeking approval lies outside our direct sphere of control. People might praise us today and turn on us tomorrow. If we hinge our sense of worth on their applause, we become puppets of external whims. Indeed, a friend of mine in his mid-career discovered that his entire sense of self had become tied to receiving public commendations in his field. He stressed daily about whether colleagues recognized his achievements, whether he had enough social media likes, always scanning for the next accolade. Yet Stoic reflection reveals that while we can do honorable work, the outcome of praise or scorn is not ours to dictate. Letting it consume our thoughts means squandering hours or days that could be spent on deeper tasks or personal growth. Freed from that chase, Stoics commit themselves to excellence for its own sake. Over time, ironically, real recognition might come, but it no longer dominates our emotional state. Observers might call this quiet confidence, seeing that we do not clamor for the limelight. We carry out our tasks with sincerity, indifferent to whether applause follows. That approach often yields less stress and more authenticity in what we create or how we serve. This synergy of Stoic acceptance and internal motivation undergirds many who appear truly self-possessed, a trait often confused with innate brilliance, but truly grounded in moral discipline. Now, let me recount a personal anecdote from my mid-years. I was invited to speak at a local forum, my first chance to garner some public esteem. I prepared diligently, but also found myself daydreaming about the applause or the compliments afterward. Stoic reflection reminded me that while I could shape my speech and deliver it with care, the audience's reception was out of my command. If they disliked my style or content, I could not forcibly change that. Realizing this, I released the mental tension of needing them to laud me. I simply did my best, striving for clarity and authenticity. Strangely enough, that Stoic release of outcome helped me speak more naturally, free from the nerves that might hamper me if I was fixated on applause. The talk went well, and yes, a few compliments rolled in, but they felt like a side note. The real satisfaction arose from knowing I had aligned my words with what I believed needed to be said. That sense of calm is precisely what Stoicism fosters, prompting me to see how easily we can slip into time-wasting daydreams about external praise or anxiety about a negative response. Freed from those illusions, we reassert ownership of our mind. This leads us to a fifth Stoic caution. Do not wallow in regrets about the unchangeable past. Stoics differentiate between learning from errors, which is wise, and fixating on them in a self-punishing cycle. I recall a neighbor who ruminated incessantly about a bad business choice he had made years prior. Each conversation circled back to, "I should have done this differently," or "if only I could rewind time." He rarely took steps to improve his current financial situation because his mind was anchored in regret. Stoicism would invite him to glean the lesson, maybe identify what signals he overlooked or how he might negotiate better next time, and then let the event rest. The Stoics warn that living in the shadow of the past robs the present of its possibilities. Indeed, I once read Seneca urging that we should treat past misfortunes as a sculptor treats raw marble, chipping away illusions to reveal the form of better judgment. But we do not keep re-chiseling the same corner in frustration. Freed from that destructive pattern, we not only reduce stress, but open mental real estate for new endeavors. My neighbor eventually realized how Stoic acceptance might let him rechannel his energy toward a fresh enterprise. Once he stopped lamenting that old fiasco, he discovered surprising creativity. People around him observed that he seemed liberated, but truly it was Stoic alignment with reality that did the liberating. We can see how each of these Stoic admonitions, avoid gossip, curb complaint, abandon scapegoating, resist chasing approval, do not brood on old regrets, knits together. They form a single ethos. Do not sink hours or emotional energy into illusions or negative loops that produce no constructive outcome. Freed from such drains, we can direct ourselves to tasks that deepen our intellect or moral sense, that foster genuine relationships or solutions. Indeed, many who practice these Stoic tenets find themselves with more free time, less mental clutter, and a calmer spirit. They might use that freed capacity to learn a new craft, to volunteer, to refine their artistry, or to rest in simple joys. This is the Stoic approach. By pruning out what is fruitless or toxic, you let your mind flourish like a well-tended garden. Now, stepping further in this narrative, we can highlight that Stoics do not condemn all forms of leisure or conversation. On the contrary, they welcome true friendship, honest talk, uplifting laughter, and even restful play, so long as it does not degrade into overindulgence or squander hours that could serve a nobler end. The key is to remain mindful, always asking, does this activity align with reason and moral flourishing? Or does it sow illusions and negativity? That question can shift your day drastically. For instance, if you plan an evening of relaxation with a friend, Stoicism says, enjoy it wholeheartedly, share stories that enrich your bond, steer away from petty rumor or complaint. In that sense, Stoics do not live a dull existence. They live a more deliberate one, protecting themselves from the stress that arises when trivial or destructive pursuits pile up. Over time, that deliberate approach yields a simpler, more fulfilling daily rhythm that counters the hectic modern pace. Consider also how these Stoic warnings relate to emotional well-being. People burdened by aimless negativity or regrets often experience higher anxiety or frustration, overshadowing any real chance at happiness. By selectively removing time wasters that feed negativity, Stoics cultivate emotional stability. Freed from the mental clutter, we can reflect on deeper aspirations, like learning a musical instrument, or forging a stronger bond with a sibling, or delving into philosophical or spiritual reading. The Stoics hold that a life guided by reason, not illusions, fosters an enduring sense of contentment. Observers might interpret that contentment as a sign of high emotional intelligence, but stoically, it is simply the absence of mental poisons that we once allowed to fester. Indeed, I remember reading how Marcus Aurelius would admonish himself to avoid trifling affairs that consume hours without yielding growth. In a modern sense, that might mean we forego hours of aimless channel flipping or endless social media arguments, redirecting that time to modest reading, a heartfelt chat with family, or a Stoic journaling session to process the day's events. Doing so repeatedly can transform the mental climate from one of mild despair to hopeful engagement. As we close out this first portion of our script, let me underscore that Stoicism is not about scolding you for enjoying your life. It is about noticing which activities genuinely enrich your mind or heart, and which lead nowhere or worse, sow stress. These 10 things Stoics never waste time on arise from the Stoic conviction that life is fleeting, our mental resources finite, and each day an opportunity either to refine our reason or to squander it. By stepping away from gossip, complaint, scapegoating, the chase for external approval, and ruminations on past regrets, we already unburden ourselves significantly. The remainder of this text, our next sections, will deepen this exploration, covering other pitfalls Stoics avoid, such as destructive indulgences, pointless arguments, or envy-driven status-seeking, along with how these Stoic stances guide us to a more balanced, less anxious daily existence. May these reflections so far encourage you to look at your own routines, see if any of these pitfalls creep in, and consider the Stoic path of letting them go. If you do, you might be startled at how much mental freedom unfolds. You might find new seeds of creativity or learning. You might feel calmer in the face of adversity, no longer entangled in the illusions that so many swirl in daily. That is, in essence, the Stoic promise. By discarding what does not serve our reason or moral growth, we reclaim the vital core of our humanity. Let us continue our conversation then, turning further into how the Stoics regarded certain activities as wastes of time, those pursuits that neither feed the mind nor uplift the spirit, and yet can so easily become our habitual ways of filling the hours. I have mentioned already how idle gossip, chronic complaint, endless scapegoating, chasing external validation, and brooding on past regrets can siphon away mental clarity, preventing us from living with the calm purposefulness that Stoicism commends. Now, I would like to delve into the next layers of this theme, illustrating a few more such activities and weaving in the lessons I have gathered through observation and personal missteps. My aim remains the same: to offer a human narration that might speak to your own experiences, revealing how letting go of these time-squandering habits can set you on a path of deeper focus and tranquility. Allow me first to recall an evening from my middle years, when I realized just how draining it was to engage in pointless arguments, the sort of debates that revolve more around pride than truth. Picture a cramped living room, a handful of acquaintances, each convinced of being correct on some trivial matter. I believe it was a petty political quibble, though it could have been about sports or local gossip, so insignificant was its content. The conversation soon became a collision of stubborn stances, with each person raising his voice, refusing to yield. What was gained at the end of it? Nothing but frayed tempers and wasted breath. I left that evening recalling how the Stoics advised that if dialogue ceases to be about genuine inquiry or constructive exchange, it becomes an exercise in futility. Indeed, Epictetus often exhorted us to remain open-minded, to test arguments logically, but also to recognize when a discourse is hopelessly mired in emotional posturing. From that night on, I resolved to avoid entangling myself in such battles. It did not mean I shrank from discussing ideas. Rather, I checked if the conversation carried the potential for actual understanding. If it devolved into name-calling or the same rehashed points, I bowed out. Over time, that small Stoic choice saved me hours of aggravation, freeing my mind for more fruitful explorations. Some might have called that wise, but in truth, it was merely Stoic prudence. Not letting pride or the need to win overshadow the real point of conversation, which is to learn or to move forward in some moral or practical sense. Another time sink the Stoics counsel against is excessive indulgence in superficial pleasures that bring little rest to the mind. Now, let me clarify. Stoicism does not forbid pleasure. A good meal, the warmth of companionship, a well-deserved rest at the end of a day, these can be virtuous joys if approached in moderation and with gratitude. What Stoics caution about are those indulgences that spiral out of control or numb the senses without offering genuine renewal. I think of the man who, after a stressful week, binge drinks to the point of losing entire Saturdays in a fog, or the person who scrolls for hours on trivial entertainment, emerging more restless than before. Such pursuits do not truly rejuvenate. They often feed an emptiness that demands more and more. Eventually, entire weekends can vanish with little to show beyond headache or fleeting distraction. Stoics observe that if we remain mindful, we might choose simpler, more edifying ways to unwind, like reading a thoughtful book, walking in nature, or engaging in heartfelt conversation. That does not imply we never watch a casual show or share a light moment. It is a matter of not letting those amusements devour the lion's share of our free time. Freed from the illusions that constant stimulation equates to relaxation, we can cultivate a calmer brand of leisure, one that indeed refreshes the mind rather than cluttering it with more noise. Now, consider a further habit, the pursuit of envy-driven status. How often do we see people draining their hours chasing some ephemeral rank, be it a fancy title, a higher rung in a social hierarchy, or possessions meant to outdo a neighbor? Stoics remind us that external trappings do not guarantee inner peace. Indeed, they can intensify anxiety as we cling to them. I recall a former colleague who poured himself into acquiring a certain model of luxury car, believing it would confirm his place among the successful. The day he finally parked it on the company lot, he glowed with pride. Yet not 2 months later, his restlessness resumed. Someone else had a more recent model, a flashier color, and the cycle of envy rekindled. From a Stoic standpoint, that chase for status through material or symbolic means is a treadmill that never ends. The same can happen with job titles or social recognition. Freed from that chase, Stoics can direct their energies toward actual accomplishments, be they intellectual, creative, or communal, that do not rest on ephemeral comparisons. People might see them as modest or unassuming, but ironically, Stoics become far less stressed about keeping up appearances and can channel their mental resources into truly valuable endeavors. Over time, that quiet Stoic approach often yields genuine respect from peers, a paradox of letting go of the search for validation, only to find a deeper admiration from those who witness your calm authenticity. Let me recount a personal story. In my mid-40s, a wave of promotions occurred at my workplace, and I was mildly overlooked. Initially, I felt the sting of envy, fixating on the notion that others outranked me. A Stoic voice within said, "Does their new title actually deprive you of your capacity to think clearly or act with virtue? If not, why let envy corrode your tranquility?" Freed from that trap, I refocused on doing my job well and assisting colleagues. Interestingly, I discovered less stress day to day, and ironically, a year later, I received a promotion that felt more aligned with my skill set. That taught me a Stoic lesson. The time I might have spent stewing in envy or maneuvering for status was instead spent refining my craft, forging better relationships. The net result was a calmer, more meaningful path. That might be described as simply staying in your lane, but Stoics see it as rational living, not ceding your mental domain to illusions about external rank as the measure of self. A seventh activity Stoics avoid is immersing themselves in endless digital or media consumption that neither informs nor truly entertains. Now, ancient Stoics did not face smartphones or Netflix, but their principle remains timeless. If you let external stimuli constantly flood your senses without discernment, you lose your capacity to reflect or think deeply. Consider how many modern folks spend hours in a fugue of random scrolling or channel flipping, only to emerge more restless than before. The Stoics would call that a misuse of the mind. Indeed, the men and women I know who embody Stoic clarity set boundaries. They decide how much news or digital content they need to stay aware, and beyond that, they either engage in purposeful reading or switch off for genuine leisure, like a good conversation or a mindful walk. This Stoic principle is not about hating technology. It is about not allowing technology to devour your day in trivial impulses. Freed from that digital trap, we unearth more time for creativity, learning, or personal connections. Observers might note we appear more in the moment, less anxious about the next ping. That calm presence is the hallmark of Stoic discipline applied to modern life, choosing how we engage with tech rather than being passively led by it. Over months, the difference is remarkable. Less stress, more focus, deeper relationships. Whenever I slip back into idle scrolling, I remind myself of this Stoic vantage, that my mind is precious, not to be drowned in random feeds that yield no real growth or serenity. Let us pivot to an eighth activity Stoics avoid: squabbling over inconsequential matters in close relationships. This might sound like common sense, but it is surprising how many can waste entire evenings or even a lifetime on petty conflicts. Stoics argue that if an issue truly matters, like a moral principle or a significant life decision, it merits calm discussion or negotiation. But if it is something trivial, we should ask whether it is worth the emotional toll to escalate. If not, Stoics often choose either to let it go or address it swiftly, seeking resolution rather than prolonged bickering. I recall a couple who constantly argued about small household tasks, letting tiny disputes balloon into hours of tension each week. A Stoic approach might be to either set a simple schedule to handle chores or accept the other's method. Freed from that petty friction, they would have had more peaceful evenings for genuine bonding or shared reflection. Over time, Stoics see that small grudges or resentments, if nurtured daily, can overshadow entire relationships. So they train themselves not to feed trivial spats. People might say Stoics are conflict-averse, but that is not quite right. Stoics simply weigh whether a conflict addresses a real concern or is just a sinkhole for emotions. If the latter, they step around it, preserving energy for more crucial discussions or for gentle harmony. That approach can drastically lower household stress and set a tone of mutual respect, enabling real closeness rather than constant friction. A related matter is the ninth Stoic caution: constantly brooding over future disasters that might never come. Men or women prone to anxious forecasting often expend huge amounts of mental energy imagining worst-case scenarios, paralyzing themselves from present action. Stoics indeed practice negative visualization, but they do so in measured ways, using it to mentally prepare for adversity, not to dwell upon it indefinitely. They map out how they would respond if a dreaded event occurred. They take prudent measures if feasible, and then they let the matter rest. In daily life, that means if you fear an economic downturn, you might build a small emergency fund or refine your skill set. But you do not continue to spin anxious what-ifs that yield only sleepless nights. Freed from that cycle of dread, Stoics can re-engage with tasks at hand or joys that remain accessible. The difference is stark. One approach leads to chronic tension and indecision, the other to calm readiness. Over time, Stoic individuals might appear unusually serene even amid uncertain times, not because they are naive, but because they have accepted that they cannot master every outcome, only their readiness and moral stance. People may call them cool-headed, but Stoics call it rational acceptance, an acknowledgement that fear cannot prevent tomorrow's unknown, but can sabotage today's clarity. Finally, Stoics warn us against neglecting self-care or rest in the name of busyness, an activity that ironically wastes more time in the long run. Overwork and self-neglect often lead to burnout, which then requires extended recovery or fosters mistakes that can be costly. Stoics emphasize moderation and remind us that our body, though not the ultimate good, is an instrument we rely on to enact reason. If we let it degrade through constant fatigue or disregard, we sabotage our capacity for virtue and rational action. People sometimes assume Stoics are all about pushing relentlessly, but the actual writings show a consistent theme of measured living, adequate rest, moderate exercise, balanced diet, so that the mind remains clear and the body can support life's duties. Freed from illusions that we must hustle incessantly at the cost of health, we find a more sustainable pace, ironically achieving more with less stress. Over time, Stoics who respect their physical well-being remain cognitively sharp and emotionally stable, whereas those who neglect themselves may find that they degrade their focus, ironically losing more time to illness or errors. Observers might see the Stoic as calm and steady, not prone to emotional outbursts or mental collapses. Indeed, that calm emerges partly from the recognition that a well-kept body fosters a well-tuned mind. Gathering these last 5 Stoic cautions, pointless arguments, destructive indulgences, envy-driven status-seeking, idle digital consumption, petty household quarrels, anxious forecasting, and health neglect. Along with the first ones we enumerated, we form the complete mosaic of 10. Each of these Stoic no-go zones revolve around illusions or impulses that devour time and rob clarity. Each one can be replaced with Stoic habits that foster sincerity, measured action, and moral or intellectual development. Let me make it clear, Stoicism does not propose we live in perpetual seriousness, never smiling or relaxing. Rather, it insists we be conscious of how we invest or squander our hours, ensuring we do not forfeit them to pursuits that bring no real benefit or worse, create negativity. At this juncture, you might wonder, how do I pivot away from these time wasters if they have become ingrained habits? Stoicism suggests a practical approach. Start by identifying which ones appear most in your routine. Maybe you notice you are prone to fruitless arguments online, or you indulge in way too much digital content without learning anything. Then, set a simple Stoic boundary. Vow to reduce that activity's time or transform it into something purposeful. For instance, if you are caught in daily arguments on social media, you might decide to respond only once with a calm statement, then cease if the other party continues heatedly. Or if you find yourself rummaging through hours of negativity-laden news, you might allocate a single half-hour to read curated articles, then close it and spend the next hour in reading something edifying or conversing with family. At first, your old impulses might pull you back, but Stoic reflection each evening helps you see if you succeeded or slipped. Over time, you train your mind to recognize the ephemeral lure of these empty pursuits so you can step away more readily. Freed from them, you discover pockets of time and mental space that had been devoured before. That can lead to new hobbies, deeper friendships, or expansions in your career that you never thought possible under the weight of stress. Allow me a final memory to illustrate the transformation. I once knew a manager named Helen who confessed she spent each night doom-scrolling news about potential economic crises, then complaining at work about the uncertain future. She recognized these cycles drained her morale and overshadowed her daily tasks. By dabbling in Stoic teachings, she first limited her news intake to a single hour in the evening. She reminded herself that reading more did not give her new control over global events. She decided to channel the time she saved into skill-building courses, brushing up on leadership strategies. Within months, her anxiety lessened. She performed better at her job, and ironically, her team felt more secure under her calmer leadership. Observers noticed a shift in her demeanor, calling her composed, intellectually engaged, or even inspirational. She attributed it to Stoicism's nudge, discarding the illusions of control over grand external affairs and refusing to waste time on a torrent of anxious consumption. That single change freed enough mental bandwidth for genuine growth. This is how Stoicism helps us transform wasted hours into purposeful living, harnessing calm, rational judgment in place of anxiety or negativity. In wrapping up this second part, let me emphasize that none of these time-wasting activities are irredeemable if done in fleeting moderation. A bit of harmless banter, occasional indulgences, or gentle reflection on the past are not evils in themselves. The Stoics caution us against letting them become our default, overshadowing the rational, moral dimension of life. If you find yourself chronically entangled in them, Stoic reflection can guide you toward a more deliberate existence. Freed from illusions or impulses that devour your day, you gain the chance to dedicate time to real learning, real companionship, real creativity, or quiet rest that truly soothes the soul. Over months, you may notice a subtle but profound shift in how you meet challenges, how you sustain relationships, and how you greet each morning. No longer feeling behind or frazzled, your mind will be open to the Stoic promise that each day can be shaped with reason, not wasted in ephemeral clamor. And that is the core of what we glean by identifying these Stoic no-go zones, a life less prone to trivial stress, more anchored in thoughtful direction, and all the richer for it. My friend, let us continue, setting out once more into the theme of these 10 activities Stoics never waste their time on, but in a manner that helps us see how such counsel applies more deeply to the shifting realities of daily life. We have touched on how the Stoic perspective encourages us to avoid indulging in empty gossip, chronic complaint, scapegoating, chasing external validation, brooding on past regrets, engaging in pointless arguments, indulging in superficial pleasures, fixating on envy-driven status, sinking in digital aimlessness, and letting trivial disputes poison close relationships. I want to explore how these warnings play out in a more personal sense, especially when unexpected turbulence arrives or when we undergo transitions that challenge our Stoic steadiness. This is where the real test comes, after all, not in calm or routine times, but in those junctures where illusions and impulses threaten to pull us back into old time-wasting patterns. Let me start with a recollection from my own life, at a period when I believed I had mastered some measure of Stoic discipline. I had worked on limiting gossip, complaint, and envy, and I felt a certain calm. Then I faced a wave of upheaval. A close companion fell ill, my job responsibilities shifted abruptly, and a personal financial setback threatened my sense of security. In that swirl, I felt the old temptations resurface. The frustration made me want to blame external forces, perhaps the colleague who mismanaged funds, or the circumstances that led to my friend's poor health. I caught myself veering toward complaining or seeking sympathy by rehashing the misfortunes. The Stoic precepts, however, reminded me that while such venting might feel momentarily comforting, it would not solve anything. Instead, I needed to do what was in my grasp: offer help to my friend, carefully replan my finances, adapt to new tasks at work. Anything beyond that was not truly in my power. This recognition saved me from sinking into bitterness or idle grumbling that would have cost me hours or days. Indeed, adopting that Stoic stance freed my mind to tackle the real tasks at hand: arranging home care for my friend, meeting with a financial advisor, calmly negotiating a workload that matched my capacity. Observers might say I handled the crisis with surprising composure, but in truth, I had simply avoided the time-wasting cycles of blame, complaint, and obsessive fear that so often bog us down. Now, some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey, and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day" so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. Now, let me consider a second scenario, something I have seen in acquaintances: the mania for self-indulgence or ephemeral pleasures. Particularly when stress hits, one might turn to overeating, overspending, or partying, hoping to drown anxieties or feel an instant spark of joy. Yet Stoic teachings caution that these fleeting fixes rarely address the deeper tension. They often complicate matters by draining finances, harming health, or leaving us guilt-ridden when the spree ends. I recall one neighbor who, after losing a significant contract, decided to treat himself to an expensive vacation to numb the disappointment. He returned a week later, no less stressed, money more depleted, tasks awaiting him untouched. The Stoics would have suggested a different approach, a thoughtful reflection on what went wrong with that contract, a plan to rectify any flaws, and perhaps a simpler form of leisure that might restore genuine balance without bankrupting him. Freed from illusions that grandiose consumption could banish sorrow, he might have found a calmer way to process disappointment and re-engage with life's duties. That is what Stoicism repeatedly teaches. Ephemeral pleasures do not inherently solve anxieties. A Stoic uses reason to see if some simpler constructive remedy exists. By resisting the lure of reckless indulgences, we spare ourselves from deeper stress once the short-lived thrill subsides. Let me pivot to another dimension: how the Stoic refusal to waste time on digital aimlessness can be tested when major events break in the news or social circles become heated. The modern world can feed us a near-constant stream of sensational headlines or polarizing debates. Under intense curiosity or moral fervor, one might spend hours refreshing news feeds, jumping into online arguments, or reading every rumor. Stoics warn that such a path often leads to heightened stress, as we saturate ourselves in issues we cannot fully resolve or let ourselves be triggered by trolls and shouting matches. By contrast, a Stoic approach would be to glean the essential facts from credible sources, reflect on what actions, if any, we can undertake to help or adapt, and then withdraw from the endless swirl. The rest, the Stoics remind us, is not ours to solve by mere furious reading or posting. Freed from that swirl, we can calmly do something more productive or restful, perhaps writing a letter to a representative, donating to a relief effort if relevant, or simply returning to tasks at home. This mental boundary, though often ridiculed by those addicted to constant news, preserves Stoic clarity. Indeed, I once saw a friend fall into daily despair by devouring every negative update he could find, convinced that being informed meant reading the same dire angles repeated. Stoic logic would question whether all that rehashing helps or just feeds anxiety. Over time, he learned to moderate his consumption, trusting that truly new developments would find him if crucial. He discovered that calmer approach let him focus more on local volunteering or constructive community dialogues, ironically making a bigger difference than his prior regimen of anxious news scrolling. That is the Stoic alternative, limiting aimless info consumption to reclaim time for actual solutions. We might next delve into how Stoic individuals handle changes in personal relationships or social circles. Sometimes a friend or relative might accuse you of not caring enough if you withdraw from, say, a gossip chain or refuse to engage in a heated but pointless argument. The Stoic stance is to respond with empathy but firm clarity. I respect your feelings, but I prefer not to dwell on negativity or rehash a dispute that yields no resolution. This might provoke some initial conflict. People used to the old patterns may resent your Stoic boundary, but if you hold steady, many eventually see that your stance fosters less drama and more genuine talk. Those who cling to petty engagements might drift away, but that also can be a natural Stoic outcome, a refining of social ties so that your circle resonates more with your rational and moral direction. Yes, Stoic living can mean certain relationships fade if they revolve solely around the activities Stoics avoid, complaining, envy, or gossip. Freed from that, you find yourself surrounded by fewer but more meaningful connections, reducing stress and feeding a sense of authentic community. People might call you selective or particular, but Stoics see it as rational curation of your environment, akin to removing noxious weeds from a garden so that healthy plants can flourish. I remember a time I had a small group of colleagues with whom I regularly had lunch. Over time, their conversation turned more and more negative, complaining, insulting absent co-workers, ridiculing passers-by. Each lunch left me tense, drained, complicit in negativity I did not endorse. Then I recalled how Stoics advise us to guard our mind from such influences. I gently broke away, sometimes lunching alone or with a different group, explaining politely that I wished to read or reflect quietly, or that I had other errands. At first they teased me for going hermit. But over the next weeks, I felt my mood lighten, my mental clarity improve. Freed from that daily swirl of toxic chatter, I rediscovered the joy of a midday walk or reading a short text in the park. The Stoic vantage was clear. If an environment fosters the very time wasters I aim to avoid, I can bow out calmly. Indeed, we are not obligated to remain in negative circles out of politeness. My ex-colleagues eventually accepted my choice, and ironically, one of them later confided that they too had grown weary of the group's negativity. Sometimes, Stoic boundaries can quietly inspire others to reconsider their own routines, further cutting down group stress. Let us pivot to the role of big decisions in life, career changes, relocations, or family expansions. Under these transitions, the temptation arises to let illusions or envy push us into decisions that do not align with Stoic reason. We might, for instance, choose a new job purely because it offers a more impressive title, ignoring that it might trap us in a toxic environment or require us to partake in unethical practices. The Stoics caution that such illusions of status or external measure can lead to a wasted life, continually chasing the next rung while missing personal fulfillment or moral integrity. Freed from illusions, Stoics weigh decisions by asking, does this path align with virtue? Does it let me grow in reason and serve others meaningfully? Can I accept the potential adversity with equanimity? If the answer is yes, we proceed. If we see that the job is purely about feeding vanity, or that we cannot maintain Stoic composure in that setting, we might politely decline or look elsewhere. This approach drastically reduces stress, for we do not bind our identity to external hierarchies. We find contentment in a role that fosters genuine alignment with our Stoic ethics, ironically often resulting in better performance and a deeper sense of satisfaction. Observers might find that Stoic men and women do not hop from one superficial opportunity to the next. Instead, they exhibit stable growth, forging a track record of thoughtful choices that, over the years, produce a more coherent life narrative. Now let me note a detail about time itself. Stoics constantly remind us that each day is finite, not guaranteed to be repeated. Thus, any hour spent in fruitless angst or trivial bickering is an hour lost forever. This perspective can sound severe, but in truth, it spurs a gentle urgency to devote our fleeting time to pursuits that matter, like reading a book that broadens our mind, spending genuine moments with loved ones, tackling a creative or philanthropic project, or even practicing Stoic reflection. Over my years, I have met many who, near the end of their lives, lamented that they wasted so much time in resentments, petty feuds, or empty amusement. They recognized too late that these activities yielded no enduring good, only regret. The Stoics want us to see that truth earlier, prompting us to shape our daily schedule with mindful selection. Freed from illusions that I have unlimited tomorrows, we treat each sunrise as precious, letting go of the dead-weight habits we have enumerated. That does not mean living in frantic worry, but in conscious priority, ensuring that if we do something, it is either beneficial, morally enriching, or a genuinely restful pleasure. This fosters a calm sense that our life is not drifting, but guided by Stoic reason, an alignment that reduces the existential stress many feel when they sense they are squandering their days. Let me share a memory that crystallized this for me. An older mentor of mine passed away rather suddenly. In his final weeks, he confided that while he did not regret normal amusements or restful moments, he did regret the hours he lost stewing in envy about his peers, or complaining about trifles, or engaging in idle chatter that sowed negativity. He told me that if he had known his life would be shorter than he expected, he would have cut out all those worthless loops. Instead, he would have read more, helped more neighbors, traveled or learned new skills with the time he spent gossiping or complaining. That conversation drove home the Stoic teaching that none of us know how many days remain. If we wait until the end to realize how many we wasted, we can do nothing to retrieve them. Stoicism, in urging us to let go of these empty pursuits now, spares us that final pang of regret. Freed from illusions of permanent time, we might realign our days. That realignment does not have to be dramatic. Perhaps we cut out half the gossip or an hour of mindless scrolling, devoting it to something that nurtures us. Over the months, that small change accumulates into a life lived more awake, more stoically content. From these anecdotes and Stoic reflections, we see that avoiding these 10 wastes is not about strict asceticism or robotic living. It is about redeeming your time so that each day feels purposeful rather than drained by illusions or negativity. If you find yourself slipping back into, say, an old argument cycle, a Stoic approach says you can recover quickly. Recognize the pattern, withdraw from it, propose a rational resolution if possible, or let it rest if not. Similarly, if you notice you have spent the last hour in mindless digital consumption, Stoic reflection suggests you gently close the app or the screen and do something more constructive or genuinely restful. Each day is a new chance to refine these Stoic boundaries. Over time, your mental environment transforms. People around you might sense you no longer partake in gossip or complaint or envy, and that shift can subtly elevate the tone of conversations, possibly encouraging them to follow suit. Or you might remain the outlier, but Stoics are comfortable standing alone if reason compels it. Either way, you find yourself freer from the tension that arises when illusions dominate your routine. Let me also highlight how letting go of these time wasters fosters emotional stability. Many of the activities we have named, complaining, gossip, envy, blame, unleash strong negative emotions. By avoiding them, Stoics keep their emotional states calmer, better poised to respond constructively to genuine challenges. That emotional stability is not numbness, it is a positive quiet. Freed from fixations that stir pointless anger or resentment, we become more empathetic toward real suffering and more able to address it. Some might claim Stoicism is about suppressing emotion, but that is a misunderstanding. Stoics do not bury genuine feelings. They filter out destructive or idle impulses that do not serve virtue or reason. Hence, ironically, Stoics might experience deeper compassion or love because their hearts are not cluttered by petty negativity or illusions. They have space to care authentically. Freed from the noise of self-centered indulgences, they might volunteer or simply be present for a friend's sorrow, acting from a place of moral clarity. This is the inverse of the stress-laden approach that sees everything as a personal affront or inconvenience. Lastly, let us address how Stoics handle the potential social fallout. If your peers or relatives remain entrenched in these unproductive pursuits, they might reject or misunderstand your shift. They could say, "You've changed," or label you as aloof or too serious. Stoics do not lash back. They accept that people cling to their habits, and if they see your Stoic posture as threatening or odd, that is their choice. Freed from illusions that we can force others to join us in more purposeful living, we carry on, letting our calm example speak. Over time, some might warm to it, noticing that you seem less stressed or more genuinely engaged in thoughtful talk. Others might remain in the same old patterns. Stoicism reminds us that we cannot rescue everyone from negativity or illusions, but we can preserve our own mental clarity. That sense of quiet independence can spark deeper respect from those who initially scoffed. Or it may lead to parted ways with minimal rancor if your values diverge drastically. Either outcome spares you from hours wasted in friction or frustration, reinforcing the Stoic message that we must release illusions of total social harmony or acceptance. We do what is within our moral and rational domain, and no more. Hence, as we near the end of this third installment, gather the threads. Stoic living is not about dryness or rigidity, but about recognizing that certain pursuits yield only stress, negativity, or illusions, draining the hours that a wise person would spend on learning, ethical action, or genuine rest. By systematically stepping away from these 10 time wasters, we become more agile, calmer, and ironically more free to enjoy real pleasures. Freed from illusions, we can direct ourselves to purposeful tasks, forging relationships that transcend petty drama, embracing small joys without guilt. People sometimes see Stoic individuals as having an aura of measured confidence, but Stoicism clarifies it as the normal fruit of living by reason, not by impulsive or shallow routines. By adopting or strengthening these Stoic boundaries, you may discover a sense of liberation that you once thought unattainable, a feeling that your day is truly yours to shape, not a swirl of forced obligations or trivial distractions. In our final portion, we will weave these lessons together more tightly, offering a cohesive vision of how, once we relinquish these time-wasting habits, we can fill the freed hours with constructive habits that align with Stoic virtue, forging a more harmonious, less anxious existence. My friend, we now arrive at the last leg of our long reflection on the 10 activities Stoics never waste their time on. Those habits that can seem innocuous or even normal, yet ultimately drain our mental clarity, sow negativity, and erode the calm pursuit of a purposeful life. Over the previous sections, I have shared how Stoic insights caution us against devoting ourselves to empty gossip, unproductive complaint, endless blame, the desperate chase for others' validation, destructive envy, fruitless arguments, indulgences that neither truly refresh nor advance our well-being, and obsessive digital or trivial pursuits. Each of these not only steals time, but also fosters illusions or emotional turbulence, blocking us from the rational composure Stoicism champions. In this concluding part, let us tie all these warnings together, sketching a portrait of how relinquishing these time wasters can liberate our days for more meaningful pursuits, deeper relationships, and a sense of moral alignment that quiets anxiety. I recall how, years ago, I believed that if I just found the right strategy for productivity or the perfect scheduling system, I could master my daily tasks. But no matter how many organizational tactics I tried, I remained restless. Only after reading enough from Epictetus and Seneca did I see that the real issue was not my scheduling tool. It was the unexamined hours I spent in negative loops, holding on to resentments, complaining about uncontrollable events, letting envy about others' progress gnaw at me. Stoic reflection taught me to identify those loops and ask, what good do these bring me? Would I not be wiser devoting that energy to study, genuine recreation, or simple gratitude for what I have? The more I peeled away these illusions, the more time seemed to expand, and the less tension I felt upon waking. Freed from complaint, I tackled problems directly or chose acceptance. Freed from fruitless blame, I adopted solution-oriented thinking. Freed from idle gossip, I engaged in more substantial dialogues or quiet reflection. People around me noticed a steadier demeanor. Internally, I sensed a burden lift, as if my mind was no longer clogged with trivial friction. One might worry, will my life become too austere if I strip away so many social pastimes or familiar distractions? The Stoic answer is that we are not removing genuine joys or needed pauses. We are discarding illusions that entangle us in negativity or that squander time without true refreshment. In fact, many who adopt these Stoic boundaries discover new joys: a calmer reading session, a walk in nature that fosters reflection, a richer conversation with a friend that transcends gossip. They find a gentle sense of contentment in purposeful tasks, no longer overshadowed by the stress that arises from trivial disputes or mindless escapades. Rather than a vacuum of fun, Stoicism helps them fill their days with more substantial pleasures and restful intervals that actually rejuvenate. So the net result is not bleak minimalism, it is clarity. By removing what is empty, we open space for what is nourishing. Consider how this shift can shape your relationships. If you have historically bonded with a friend over mutual complaint or gossip, letting go of those habits might feel unsettling at first. Yet Stoics advise that any friendship reliant on negativity was never robust. By steering the conversation toward genuine interest, discussing shared goals, past lessons, or even philosophical inquiries, you might discover a deeper bond, or you might part ways if that friend only thrives on negativity. In either case, you reduce the stress that stems from inauthentic connections. Over time, Stoics often find they gather around them a smaller circle of individuals who share, or at least respect, their pursuit of reasoned, constructive discourse. These relationships can bring real emotional support, free of the angst or tension that negative patterns once fostered. The same logic applies to family interactions. Stoic discipline can help you diffuse recurring arguments or envy, redirecting that energy toward genuine closeness. Freed from illusions that you must win each family dispute, you might surprise relatives with a calmer stance, paving the way for honest resolution. Let me share a brief anecdote about a woman I once knew who realized that her family gatherings always devolved into rehashing old grievances or gossip about absent cousins. She, inspired by Stoic readings, decided to gently steer conversations toward shared memories, or else propose group activities like cooking together or playing a simple game. Initially, some resisted, but her steady, non-judgmental redirection gradually changed the tone of these gatherings, so they no longer ended with everyone in a foul mood. People later commented that she seemed like the anchor of the family now. She confided to me that it was simply Stoic guidance, refusing to let the group wallow in negativity and offering a path of constructive engagement. Freed from that time wasted on cyclical complaints, the family discovered new ways to bond, ironically forging stronger ties than before. That is the Stoic magic. By rejecting illusions, you often unlock a simpler, more genuine form of connection. Another dimension we can highlight is how Stoicism's "don't waste time" principle fosters a sense of steady growth, whether in personal learning or career development. When you eliminate hours consumed by trivial social media quarrels or mindless surfing, you reclaim a surprising chunk of your day. Stoics would suggest using that reclaimed time to invest in reading something that broadens your mind, practicing a skill, or working on a creative project that resonates with your values. That incremental investment, repeated daily or weekly, can lead to a remarkable transformation over months or years. Indeed, many people who used to say, "I have no time to learn a new language," or "I'm too busy to pursue that certification," find, once they drop an hour or two of daily aimless activity, that they do have time. By systematically guarding their attention from these Stoic prohibited loops, they open the door to intellectual or professional leaps they once thought impossible. Freed from the illusions that "I must keep up with every gossip or every digital feed," they harness that mental bandwidth to refine their craft or to build something tangible. Observers might label them ambitious or high-achieving, but from a Stoic lens, it is just the removal of wasteful habits that allows them to shine. We should also examine how letting go of these time wasters affects emotional well-being in times of crisis. If a serious problem arises, like a health scare or a sudden job loss, people often spiral into complaint, blame, or regret. Stoics, having trained themselves not to dwell in these loops, can mobilize quicker. Their mind, unshackled by illusions, can focus on immediate constructive steps, such as seeking the best medical advice, reworking finances, or calmly planning the next career move. Freed from the paralyzing negativity, they reduce the secondary stress that cripples many in crisis. This fosters a quiet resilience. Indeed, I recall a co-worker who lost a major contract but responded with Stoic composure. No frantic blame, no wallowing, no inundation with digital doom scrolling. Instead, within days, he launched an outreach for new clients, tapped his network politely, and accepted that some short-term strain was inevitable. A month later, he emerged on a stable footing. People admired his cool under pressure, while he attributed it to the Stoic principle of not letting illusions of total control warp his perspective. By not wasting his time in emotional spirals, he freed that energy for real solutions, a strategy that significantly reduced the crisis's impact. Now, let me weave in a note on how to keep these Stoic boundaries from morphing into rigid asceticism. Stoicism aims at a balanced life guided by reason. That means if you find yourself in a lively conversation with friends, it is not required to kill the mood by stating, "We must not gossip." The Stoic approach is more nuanced. If the talk veers into harmful or repetitive rumor, you might gently pivot the subject or add a reflective angle. If the conversation remains superficial but harmlessly entertaining, you might enjoy it in moderation, ensuring it does not degrade into malicious slander. The line is drawn where negativity or futility dominate, offering no moral or relational value. Freed from extremist interpretations of Stoicism, we find a humane way to apply these guidelines. Remain watchful for when an activity ceases to be beneficial or truly restful, and if so, gracefully step away. This prevents Stoicism from becoming an unkind or aloof stance. Instead, it invites a thoughtful approach to social and leisure contexts. People might sense your presence is calm yet open, not preachy, but quietly unwilling to partake in negative loops. Furthermore, let us contemplate how Stoic advice on time wasting relates to personal creativity or spiritual growth. Stoics hold that we thrive when we align our actions with reasoned intent, leaving space for contemplation or creativity that awakens our deeper faculties. If we fill all free moments with pointless debates, anxious scrolling, or ephemeral indulgences, we starve that capacity to reflect on higher matters, moral questions, spiritual inquiries, or imaginative pursuits. By abstaining from the 10 wastes, we carve out mental silence in which insights can surface. Many men and women I have known report that once they dial down on social media or idle chit-chat, their minds spontaneously turn to writing, painting, or philosophical study. Freed from clutter, the mind roams more productively, possibly unveiling passions they had long suppressed. Stoicism sees this as natural. A mind not entangled in illusions finds fertile ground for introspection or artistry. Observers might be struck by how a once distracted individual blossoms into a thoughtful or creative soul. But Stoics would say that potential always existed. It was simply hidden behind the noise of wasted hours. Let me share a final anecdote from an older mentor who, after retiring, realized how he had spent decades letting trivial daily squabbles and incessant news fixations overshadow his latent interest in calligraphy. Once free of the daily job constraints, he kept noticing how old habits of complaint or scapegoating threatened to creep into his newfound leisure. The Stoic insights he'd studied reminded him to gently reject these patterns, acknowledging their futility, and instead devote his mornings to calligraphy practice, with a calm vow to refine his technique. Over a year, he became quite skilled, entering a meditative state each day that nourished both his sense of accomplishment and emotional well-being. People marveled at the beauty of his calligraphic pieces, but he said the real gift was the tranquility he found. Freed from illusions that he must keep complaining about the world or prove himself through some fancy external measure, he discovered a quiet joy in mastery. That journey exemplifies how discarding time wasters can unlock a path of personal fulfillment, even in later life. A Stoic viewpoint fosters the humility to say, yes, I used to fritter away hours, but now I embrace a more mindful approach. As we draw this final portion to a close, the overarching message is that Stoicism does not scold or shame us for occasionally relaxing or indulging. Rather, it invites us to see where our daily patterns harm our mental clarity, fueling negativity or illusions, and to release those patterns so that our mind can operate in a freer, more uplifted manner. By abstaining from these 10 categories of empty or counterproductive activities, we find ourselves with hours or mental capacity that had been lost. We can invest them in moral reflection, skill development, sincere relationships, or even restful fun that truly refreshes. Over weeks and months, that reallocation yields a life less cluttered by regrets or petty drama, more anchored in Stoic reason, a life that others might call productive or balanced, but Stoics would describe simply as aligned with our rational nature and moral aspirations. If you wish to embark on this path, perhaps start by writing down each of the 10 pitfalls: gossip, complaint, scapegoating, chasing validation, dwelling on regrets, unproductive arguments, superficial indulgences, envy-based status-seeking, digital aimlessness, and letting small disputes poison relationships, and noticing which ones dominate your routine. Then, in the Stoic spirit of daily reflection, commit to reducing one or two. Identify how you might fill that freed space, whether with purposeful learning, genuine rest, or a heartfelt conversation. Keep track each evening. Did I curb that habit, or did old impulses resurface? If the latter, reflect calmly, see what triggered you, plan how to handle it tomorrow. Over time, you will sense a mental shift, less tension, more clarity, possibly a spark of renewed interests you had shelved. People around you might notice you are calmer or more content, not easily pulled into negativity or idle talk. That is Stoicism in action, not an instant revolution, but a steady clearing away of illusions, leading to a life that feels lighter and more genuinely directed. As we conclude these reflections, let me remind you that Stoicism is not about escaping reality, but engaging it with discernment, ensuring we do not bury ourselves in trivial or harmful loops. By steering clear of the 10 activities we have discussed, we align ourselves with a simpler, saner mode of living that fosters virtue and reason. In that alignment, we discover that many daily stresses fade because they were never essential. Freed from illusions, we stand better prepared to face real challenges, forging solutions that come from a mind unencumbered by fruitless pursuits. And thus, the Stoic path, though it may appear austere, proves itself the gateway to a richer, more humane existence, one in which each day's hours are spent in ways we can look upon without regret when evening falls. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day,